And before this add noise VOP, let's maybe rename this to add big noise, and let's drop down an attribute noise over this VOP. And I want to use this to add some more high frequency noise. So let's set the attribute name to be P and range value 0 centered, and drop down the amplitude maybe to 0.1, and let's drop down the element size maybe to 0.1 as well, and let's set the amplitude to 0.05. And we also want to animate this noise, so turn on animate noise and decrease the pulse duration to maybe 0.2 so it moves a little faster. Let's maybe go to the resample and add a little bit more points, so set this to 0.01 and maybe drop down the amplitude even further to 0.025. So we just add a little bit of small frequency noise and maybe increase this to 0.04. Alright, so this is pretty good. And what we can do now is a similar technique with what we did with the grids with the connectivity. We can multiply these points. So from the set amp, I will drop down a point replicate, and let's maybe generate 5 points and set the shape to be a uniform scale of 0. So now instead of having 1 point in the center, we have 5 points, and so this copies 5 lines. The problem here is that these are all using the same settings. And in this point replicate, let's not forget to go to the attribute tab and turn on copy source attributes. So we want to copy this amp attribute as well. So if we go back, we have 5 lines essentially. Let's go over here before the polywire. So we have 5 prims and they are all using the same values for the noise. So after the resample, we can drop down a connectivity node and give each of these copies a class attribute. So now inside the attribute VOP for the noise, we can give each of these lines a different offset. So let's maybe grab all of this. So this will be the amplitude, and over here we set the offset. So when we create this vector for the offset, we can also type in bind, and let's import our integer attribute, that's class, and set this to any of these values for the float to vector and create a different offset for each of these. So instantly we created a very complex result. And let's go up, let's go to our node, and we probably can go ahead and set a lower P scale, so maybe 0.3 or maybe 0.2, and maybe give this a little bit more division, so 8. And we can also maybe add more variation to our P scale by using a noise. So inside this P scale attribute VOP, let's go ahead and create a noise as well. So from P, a flow noise, and let's set a fit range and place this directly inside this multiply. And let's normalize the noise and make it go from -1 to 1, and maybe increase the frequency a little bit. And also let's use our bind, and let's also use the class attribute that we created, so integer, and import the class attribute and generate a new vector from this, so float to vector, and plug this into our offset. Okay, and from here maybe I can increase the frequency a little bit, or rather the roughness, and maybe also the frequency. And let's play around with the source min. Let's bring this in a little bit closer towards 0, and maybe decrease the source max, so we have a sharper change in our P scale. So if I set this destination min to 1, we can see that this is the original result, and this is with the variation in the P scale now with the noise. Okay, so that's good. Let's go back up. And also the final thing that we want to do is let's generate a color attribute. So let's create another attribute VOP for this, and I will name this to set CD, And let's first go to our p-scale, and we want to do exactly the same thing that we did here. So I will grab all of these nodes with the fit and Control C to copy these. Let's go in our set CD and paste them here. And let's plug this fit into the CD to visualize the result. And maybe for this fit range, I want to maybe change some of these values. So bring this closer to 0, the source min, and let's increase the contrast a little bit more. And let's finally plug this into a ramp parameter, and we can leave this as RGB. And let's go up, and instead of black, let's maybe use a dark blue. And for the white, let's use a light blue. So we have some variation in the color as well. And maybe actually just increase the frequency just a little bit. And for this, I might also want to give this noise a little bit of animation, so I will promote the flow attribute and go up and just set the flow value to $T. So this will just add a little bit of animation. And we will use this color that we set here for the points inside the final render as well, so this is important that you set up the color here. And maybe let's go back to the first point here and make this a little bit darker. So this will add some color variation in our lining, and it's going to be extremely important that we have this variation in the value of the color when we add the glow. So when we add the glow later inside of Nuke, the points that are closer to white will have their glow be affected differently than the points with a darker color, and this will create a lot of visual interest, and it's overall going to be a much more visually interesting effect.